I'm Brenda Talent, the CEO of the Show Me Institute, and I'm so glad you can join us today as we have this discussion about crime and public safety trends in St. Louis, particularly St. Louis City. As an independent research and educational organization, the Show Me Institute focuses on Missouri's fiscal and economic policies from a free market lens. We want Missouri to be a place where we lead the nation in wealth, we have a quality education, and a flourishing civil society. You can learn more about our research and the policies that we're involved in at showmeinstitute.org. You know, when we look at St. Louis, the state, our region, we know a lot needs to be done to get us to the place where we would like us to be. Certainly, ensuring public safety is critical to a thriving and healthy community and necessary to attract new residents. And we know how the city of St. Louis really is perceived affects the entire region, if not the state. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today, and without any more delay, let me introduce our moderator. Patrick Tuohey is a senior fellow at the Show Me Institute and a co-founder and director of policy at the Better Cities Project. Before establishing the Better Cities Project, Patrick was the director of municipal policy at the Show Me Institute. So he's gone on to bigger and better things, but then he's added us back in, which we're very thankful for. He is currently a visiting fellow at the Yorktown Foundation for Public Policy in Virginia, and also a regular opinion columnist for the Kansas City Star, and we always wish him good luck with that as he tries to persuade people on the other side of the state that free markets really should reign. And with that, Patrick.
So thank you, everyone, for being here. As Brenda said, my name is Patrick Tuohey. I live in Kansas City, so I'm a carpetbagger tonight. And that's good because I get to play dumb. I don't know your city as well as you do, of course, so I'm going to ask a bunch of questions that maybe as someone from St. Louis would be embarrassed to ask. And I'll start off by saying someone had to correct my pronunciation of De Pere earlier this week. Yeah. Oh. Now, like I said, I'm from Kansas City, so we're going to talk about crime in the city of St. Louis, and all the data we talk about will be about the city, not the county. And although, like I said, it's a lot of it, a lot about the city I don't know. I'm happy not to be talking about the Chiefs, because that's a lot of other things we don't know in Kansas City. And a lot of these events, you're going to, just by the way we have it set up, you expect that I'm going to talk, our panelists are going to talk, and you're going to listen. That's not what I want to do tonight. I'm going to treat this more like a large focus group, because you guys have the information that I want to get tonight, which is basically, how do you understand crime in the city? And I'm going to share with you some numbers and ask if you believe them. So I'm going to be coming out and asking you guys to tell me your thoughts, tell me your understanding. Not so much give me a laundry list of your own experiences with crime, but speak more broadly about what's going on in the city and what it's going to take for things to get better, or more importantly, what it's going to take for you to believe that things are getting better. So first, I've got Dr. Janet Lauritsen. She is a professor of criminologist at UMSL. And importantly for us, that she has worked with the National Crime Victimization Survey. That is how we have a sense that our crime statistics underreport crime, because the victimization survey goes out and talks to people around the country and asks them if they've been a victim of crime, and then compares that with the police collected crime statistics. And so a lot of times people want to say, you've heard about Washington, D.C., people want to say, well, the crime statistics aren't reliable. Janet and her work is familiar with how that data is collected and can speak to that. Pernell Witherspoon teaches at Lindenwood University. He's a criminologist. He focuses on criminal justice and race, criminal justice ethics, and both in criminal justice system and specifically the policing. And so he'll be able to talk about, and actually, the reason why I'm particularly happy to have Dr. Witherspoon with us is that he's born and raised in St. Louis and was a St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department working in the narcotics division before becoming a professor. So Dr. Witherspoon can speak broadly about crime from the process, from a criminologist point of view and from a police point of view. And Steve Capizzi works with the Circuit Attorney's Office. He was there from 2005 to 2018, is that correct? Sure. And then left for a spell, and came back in 2023, where he he's prosecuted all sorts of crime. There's a whole list here, but basically all the crimes. And he returned to the Circuit Attorney's Office and is now Chief Warrant Officer, and was appointed First Assistant Circuit Attorney in December 2024, and basically manages the day-to-day office. So if you have any complaints about the criminal justice system, this is the guy to talk to. Now, let me talk to you about the rest of you. When you registered, we asked you to fill out a survey. Only about a third of you did, but here's what we've got. The seriousness of violent crime in Kansas City. On a scale of 1 to 10, 6 of you chose 4. Oh, forgive me, thank you. Kansas City's got crime problems too. 6 of you did 4 out of 5, and 5 of you did 5 out of 5. So again, that's not surprising. The overall perception of public safety in the city of St. Louis over the past 5 years. Now, 6 of you said it's stayed roughly the same, but 3 said it's worsened somewhat, and 3 said it's worsened greatly. And then confidence that St. Louis can reduce violent crime in the next 5 years. So 8 of you were in the middle, 4 and said what? Not very confident. 1 said not confident at all. And this was a survey done by Up One Insights just a few weeks ago, and they talked to everybody in the state of Missouri. I think they surveyed around 600 people, and they said that in your local community, 56% of the people say that crime has stayed about the same, but more people think it's gone up than think it's gone down. And then across the state, 43% said that crime has gone up. How many, for the last few slides, how many of you think that that represents your own personal view, with a show of hands? Just the idea that crime is bad and getting worse.
Crime is bad.
Okay, so speak to that.
Well, part of it was the timing of 5 years. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
And I think that I lived in the city. I worked in the city, and now I go there and I see a different city. And I think that that's been continuing. It has not gotten better, although I will give the prosecutor and the police cops for trying to step up and do more, but they don't have enough people, and they don't have enough, so I think it's going to get worse before it can get better. So I see a 20, 25-year plan before that gets.
Who else thinks that crime in the city is getting worse? Right up here. Yes, sir. Speak to that.
Oh, well, I mean, I went to St. Louis University in the 90s, and it was not as bad as I perceive it being now. And maybe the reporting is better, but I just think that, in my perception, having worked down there quite a bit, that there's a lot of people running red lights. There are people who are getting robbed in broad daylight. There's a blues player that was getting robbed at the Gateway Arch. And then there was that poor young lady who was, her legs were cut off because someone's running through red lights.
Is there a third person who thinks that crime is going up in the city? Yes, sir, in the back.
I mean, my observation would be based on having worked in the city about 20 years ago. I worked downtown about 20 years ago, and I remember being able to go out at lunchtime, walk around, feel comfortable. There were lots and lots of restaurants. I go down there now, and it's just a ghost town. Now, granted, that's just one component of it. I know there's many factors at play, but I just feel like crime has to be one of the factors driving just the rampant decline of the city. And so I just feel like that has got to be a contributing factor to it. So that's the extent of my observation.
Thank you. Now, let me ask the three of you, before we get into the actual crime stats, you must hear this all the time. The perception is that things are getting worse. How common is this, or what do you think underpins the perception? Any of you?
I mean, I hear it all the time. I actually live in the county, but I obviously work in the city. And yeah, I think that is the perception. I think we'll get to the numbers here in a little bit to show that at least the numbers that we see that I have access to show the opposite. But whoever the third gentleman was, I agree with that there's no business. The business decline in the city has caused some vacancies, and that's noticeable. Just from my personal experience, walking to lunch, the options are now limited. Where when I started back in 2005, there was much more options, much more people around, and I think with less people being around, there's, you get the feeling that it's less safe. But from our perspective as prosecutors, we haven't seen a huge increase or an increase at all of the types of crimes that happen like in the downtown area versus other parts of the city. But I think that's a big component, is that it's empty. And I think that causes that perception sometimes, even though the numbers would show the opposite.
Is this on? Okay, so in over the past 40 years, if we take a step and look back to prior high crime periods we've had in the United States, which tend to be shared across most cities in the United States. And when crime goes up nationally, it tends to do so in most of the largest cities. We had peaks in 1983, peaks in 1993, and since then, a gradual decline into the 2000s and a flattening out until 2020 and COVID, and a couple of little bumps around 2016, and we have a decline nationally at this point. What's happened with respect to perspectives over those 4 decades is that when you ask people how concerned they are about crime, whether they're afraid to walk around at night in certain areas, they tend to become more fearful as crime rates go up, but it takes several years. There's a lag between the amount of time that crime starts to go down and people's perceptions of that start to go along with it. And the point of that is that this is not an unusual pattern. And I think in the case of St. Louis, and for those of you who go down to the city regularly, there are other indicators besides crime that are heightening concern for good reason. They're dangerous, like blowing lights or just any sort of public disorder. That people are more heightened to that when they're looking for information about whether they feel safer in a place or less safe.
Thank you. So let's spend a few minutes looking at the actual statistics. And the images you're going to see come from the draft report that's on the table in front of you. You're welcome to those. Again, that is a working copy. We will release it probably in a few weeks, but that's what we've got right now. And we may add some of the comments we hear tonight to kind of beef up the data. But per capita rates of crime in the city of St. Louis by category, 86 to 2023. Property crime has gone down. Violent crime has gone down a little bit, and this stops at 2023, but it has continued over the last 2 years. Per capita homicides in the city of St. Louis. Again, it's been coming down the last few years and continued through 2025. The trend is still positive, but over the last few years, the numbers have dropped dramatically. Per capita homicide rates of St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield. This has come down a little bit at Kansas City here. But again, St. Louis has dropped dramatically, and Springfield is largely flat, but a little bit up over the last, say, 5 or 6 years. And then figure 10, per capita motor vehicle theft rates in St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield. So you guys really outdid yourself for the last few years, but they're coming down, and they've continued to come down. Springfield stayed down, but Kansas City, we've seen an increase, and I honestly don't know what's happened over the last 2 or 3 years for my city. And so, here's what I want to talk about. We surveyed you. You said you didn't believe that crime was going down. We talked about it here. Some of you said you didn't believe that crime is going down. Crime is going down. So, do you believe the crime stats? And it's okay if you don't. What would you need? What more would you need to learn to believe the crime stats? And then going forward, what would you need to know to be confident that these trends that we're seeing in the city of St. Louis are going to continue? So this is where I'm going to start picking on you. Does anybody not believe the crime stats that we looked over? Yes?
I do not believe it.
All right, let's wait till the mic gets to you so we can all hear you.
I do not believe them.
Okay. Thank you. Direct. Can you give me a little bit more texture to that?
Yes, the 911 call center would have to pick up the calls as they come in. The police department would have to be adequately staffed so that they can timely respond to the calls as they come in. There's a difference between, hey, this is a murder. I don't know what happened here. It's been a day. So, I mean, I've witnessed 2 robberies in the last several months. And like one of my solutions is like, do I run this guy over? I know he is the robbery suspect. So then what would I do? I'd have to wait around like 4 hours for the police to come. So I'd explain like I killed the robber. What do we do now?
All right, so let me ask. I understand that 911 services in the city have been an issue. And of course, there is the idea. I mean, I've had my car broken into in my driveway at the back of my house twice, did not bother to report it to the police because what's the point? So that is a thing. How do you, what's your reaction when people point that out?
I mean, there are less officers for sure over the last 20 years. I know the department struggles with that. I can't really speak to the 911 situation. I know it's been revamped. I believe it's better now, but we don't really see that part of it. From our perspective, you know, we certainly prosecute any and review any case that's brought to us, which, you know, that's all we can do as prosecutors. We're not out there investigating. But our numbers as far as felonies go are about the same as they were 20 years ago. Our misdemeanors are down, but for the types of crimes you're explaining or you're talking about, Dan, it's you know, we're seeing similar numbers that we've always prosecuted in those types of crimes. You know, I know Chief Tracy. I think he does a good job with what he has. I know he's always seeking for more officers. Do I personally think that would help? I do. I do think more officers would be very beneficial. But from our perspective at the prosecutor's office, you know, we review anything that's brought in and try to make that charging decision.
So one point about the quality of homicide data. Fortunately, we do have another source of data on homicide in the country, and it's used everywhere, and that's the coroner's office. When a dead body shows up, unless that dead body is not discovered, it goes to the coroner's office as well. So the coroner will rule on that, and it turns out that the trends and the levels in those two resources about crime, those two sources of data, are tracked extremely closely. It would be hard to imagine. I don't know of a case in which a homicide data in any particular city does not match what's found in the coroner's office. So that we at least have a validity and a reliability check on that. When it comes to reporting crime to the police during COVID and the pandemic, and alongside the events with George Floyd and the protests and everything, the police officers had to withdraw from their activities on the street because it was a health risk to them. They weren't pulling people over. They were losing, a lot of retirements came because the older officers didn't want to be exposed to those situations. So indeed, there was a lot of withdrawal, and then the public, and then we had the collapse of the 911 system, and I just don't know if that's been corroborated yet with any other source of data. But we were not the only city. We were one of the only cities where the system collapsed. But the other thing we have is this victim survey data. And in victim survey data, we ask people, were the police notified of the offense for every particular non-lethal crime type in violence and in property crime? The trends in that showed a slight downturn nationally during COVID and the pandemic, but returned to their levels prior to that. So there are lots and lots of anecdotes about people not reporting to the police, but the data that victims are telling us do not corroborate this collapse in reporting. So that's especially for the violent crimes and the most serious crimes. Much more variability and lower rates of things like larceny, burglary from theft from a motor vehicle, theft from your property. Those rates are much lower than motor vehicle theft and serious violent crime. So that's what the data show us. So it's possible, yes, that St. Louis's reporting is unique, but I doubt it's that much different than Baltimore, Detroit, New Orleans, Washington, D.C., Miami, et cetera. So we can look at more than one city when we look at what's happening that way to try to get a sense of whether there's something going on.
Does anyone else disbelieve that crime numbers are going down? Yes, sir.
Question. Do your statistics include juveniles? We watch the news. There's an awful lot of kids that are 12, 14 going around shooting people and stealing cars and stuff.
Yes,
And
they do.
They get turned loose right away, so they show up in the statistics.
That might explain the vehicle theft rates, but yes, it captures that as well. Yes.
Does the homicide take into consideration that medical technology has gotten better and so more people are surviving?
Well, yes. So it's two things. Well, actually, I heard a gentleman on a podcast who tracks this data nationwide. Yes, it is the smartphone, the ability of communications that allows people to call for help, to get medical attention faster, which affects the homicide rate, and it's the medical assistance that they get. But he said, and I don't know this to be true, but he said the power of the weapons people are using has offset the cost of the technology. People are using bigger and badder guns. But yes, one thing I would like to look at, and maybe some of you would be familiar with this, is the shooting rate versus the homicide rate, right? The assault with a weapon or the shooting rate may be going up even if the homicide rate is going down. Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, so I contend that the crime in the city may be going down, but I truly believe, and I know this in my own community, it is rising in the county. I mean, my city has turned into the Wild West, and I'm not joking about that. As well as St. Charles crime has continued to rise. So since the city and the county are independent, I think a lot of those people that were in the city are now victimizing the people in the county. We're better pickings.
Where the money is.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I believe the trends are the same in the county, that numbers are going down. Maybe violent assault is going down more slowly in the county than other crimes in the county. But ultimately, the story in the city and in the county and in the country as a whole is that crime is trending downward. But Janet said earlier, it's that lagging indicator, and that's what I want to get to. Does anyone else doubt that crime is going down of any kind?
We have to specify what name.
Okay, well, tell me, is there a particular type of crime that you...
Car theft is bigger. Homicides are pretty accurate because you can't hide the bodies, but a lot of people just don't bother to report it. I've got friends who had cars stolen and wheels stolen off their car, bashed up, but
Sure.
they just don't bother to call the police because they figure they're not going to bother with it.
Okay, so for those of you who are skeptical that the numbers are going down, what more information would you want to make you either believe that they're going down, or just what more information would you want to make you confident that you understand the crime trends, what's going on in the city? Yes, sir.
Well, I think I'll just kind of repeat the comment that I made before. I think rather than statistics, which we all know can be manipulated if you want to. I'm not accusing you of doing that, but I'm just saying statistics can be motivated. I think what would convince me is people moving back into the city, seeing businesses move into the city and thrive. I think that would be one indicator that people feel safe and are willing to live and do business there.
Okay.
That to me would be a big
Here's the problem
positive
with
sign.
that. That's circular. Are you going to move back into the city?
I never lived there. I worked there.
Oh, okay. Would you move into the city?
No.
Okay. So what you're saying is people will believe that the city is safe once they move into the city, but they're not going to move into the city until they believe it's safe. So I understand that. If more people were moving into the city, that would be an indicator, right? Because traffic at restaurants and at games, neighborhoods would clear up. I get that. I would see it, but that doesn't help me get there, right? Because it's sort of like people will move into the city when people move into the city. Yes.
I'm going to try to make this make sense. It makes sense in my head. We'll see. So I think what it would take to be confident of this trend, you kind of have to understand where you are thinking of, like, when I look at these crime statistics, I'm like, what am I comparing that to in my own head? Like, I can look at it and say, oh, it was this way here and it was this way and this is, but what was I thinking about it last year? Where was my brain thinking about how dangerous it was last year or 5 years ago or 20 years ago? So I have to first think, what's my threshold, I guess, in order to get there. So that's just a random thought that I
think
had.
that's absolutely valid. I think, we all have our own particular experiences, and it changes year to year.
Yeah.
And our perception, regardless of what lines on a chart will tell us. So I think there's something to that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess I do you believe the crime stats? Yes, I believe the crime stats that you're presenting, but I'm not sure I believe those are the crime stats, meaning that what's being reported is correct. I mean, that's what's being reported. But I'll go back to, the 911 call. It's you get to a point, I think, when you make a call and your hubcap gets stolen or your bike gets stolen, and you call and they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. The next time that happens, you don't report it. So therefore, everybody, well, I talked to my neighbor and he had something stolen. I had something stolen. He had something stolen. None of us reported it. So the crime is actually there, but it's not being reported because reporting it does no good. When you're 800 cops down in the city and you call and they say, well, that's not something they can do. Now, homicides, you got a body. That's, they're going to come out and see that. Vehicle theft, that's big enough. Steal a $40,000 car, somebody's going to come out and report it. But the other crimes that are happening aren't they're not being reported, so they're not in those crime stats. I'm not saying your stats are wrong. I'm just saying that they're not being reported.
Okay, that's fair. And by the way, let me add that the intern we had work with us on this paper had his car broken into twice and moved back to Springfield where he worked remotely.
There you go.
Okay. So again, everything you've said, he did not.
There you go.
So I get it. No, your experience, your lived experience that we're talking about is totally legit. Move me to the next point. So yes, I've had the same experience, the same conversations with my neighbors. You kind of roll your eyes. Is everybody okay? You pay for the window, all that. How do we get beyond that? How do I get to and I don't know is a fair answer.
Hire more police.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, all right, that's fair.
This room has been downtown. I mean, it was really bad during COVID. The MAC used to have drag racing on 4th Avenue. I mean, and that stopped once COVID was over, but it's still there. I mean, it's not changed.
Yes, sir.
So I think for me, I mean, it's really pretty simple. There's not a single day that I drive in the city that I don't see just insane driving. So, 70, 75, and a 40, that's just commonplace multiple times. Along Broadway, I believe, I haven't been out, but I think they have it. They have the big concrete barriers, which I believe the highway, which they put up to prevent drag racing, I'm told. And so that you might as well just run up a white flag and say, lawlessness, we can't stop drag racing. So we're going to put these barriers up to look like a third world country. So that's it. But as far as what I would believe, I mean, if I actually go in and don't see that stuff, then I'd be like, well, because those other numbers to me are irrelevant because all those other things say total lawlessness.
Okay.
And it's like,
We've all had this experience. You buy a new make of car, and then as soon as you buy it, you see on the road everyone else is driving the same car. Just me? Here's my fear. Once we believe that crime in the city is bad, we see it everywhere. When we go to a city that we're not familiar with, and people come to St. Louis and have had this experience, but when we go to a city that we're not familiar with, we don't see what the people who live there are looking for, right? So we may go to New Orleans or Detroit and not see the crime, even though people there will have the same conversation we're having here. Is there something to that? Is there something to that? You guys live in the county. When you go into the city, you've got this perception of crime, and so you see it everywhere? Because again, the numbers are going down, and I'm not taking anything away from what you've seen and what you believe, but I'm trying to get to the point where we feel that things are getting better when the numbers are telling us they're getting better. Am I crazy for that? Someone? Anyone?
I would notice someone doing 70 and a 40 in any city I go to. I really would.
Okay.
I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm in Louisville, 70 or 80 and a 40 is perfectly normal here. I just, so that one, for me, I mean, I think when there's that level of lawlessness and multiple people do that, that's a horrible sign for a city.
Yes, sir.
I may be a lone voice here, but I'm downtown every day, and I don't have that perception of a high crime rate. I'm downtown every day, and I see police downtown. I don't see a lot of the drag racing that people talk about. Did it happen during the COVID times? Yes. Did I see it? Yes. But now it's just drastically down, and I welcome everyone to come down to the city. So
Okay.
it's great.
Why is your experience different than everyone else's?
Why is it different than everyone?
Yeah. I mean, do you have an explanation as to why what you see is different than what other people see? I mean, do you ride in the back of a limo?
Hardly.
Are you down there only during business hours?
Yeah, I'm down there. I'm down there from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. But it's not lost on me that this event that deals with the perception of crime in the city of St. Louis is being held at a private club in the county. Right?
No, that's fair. And last month we had one in the city. So this is the second of two events. But
Thank you. I didn't know about the first one.
But yes, I believe me. I look at this room. This looks like the county. Pernell, I'm not going to make you speak for the police, but you do work with the police, and you were a police officer. Do you have anything to say about people's concern about the number of police, the quality of policing, maybe 911, either when you were on the force or what you've seen over time?
Okay. Well, one thing for sure is that the police chiefs have to run their units efficiently. And the threshold that police officers will have for what danger is may be different from what the citizens have. And sometimes we really don't understand the definition of some of the crimes that we discuss. For instance, you said you witnessed 2 robberies. Hopefully you witnessed 2 thefts and not robberies. Okay.
He was a prosecutor, so. Oh.
Okay, that blows that theory. But some people don't understand really the threshold of what the police may consider to be dangerous that just occurred. So if you call for something, call for police, and the police don't consider it to be as dangerous based on the efficiency that they need to run the department with, you're going to feel like, well, they're not going to do anything anyway. First of all, do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense at all, honestly? Second, when it comes to these perceptions, first, I guess I need to ask you to take a deep breath, okay? Because I don't know any of you, right? And one of the things that I discuss a lot in my studies are racial issues. And I would like for everyone to ask themselves, knowing that I don't know you, to what extent do you think you are allowing any type of racial implications to be involved in your perception? There's plenty of research that speak to when the populations of blacks increase, whites get a little more fearful. Could explain why some have moved away from the city. Just ask yourself those questions, and then we might be able to get at solutions in a better way. Did that make sense? Probably not. And it makes, and I understand.
Thank you. I have a comment. I mean, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference if it's a panhandler that wants some change, if it's somebody that runs up behind me and grabs my wallet. I don't know if that's a robbery or a theft, but I'm offended and fearful. Or if, in fact, somebody comes up to me with a gun and says, those are all offensive to me and are enough to cloud my perception of the area where that occurs. And so debating whether is it a robbery or a theft doesn't make any difference to me. I've been forced to change where I was at that moment.
Yes, ma'am, over here.
I just wanted to say that I was just in New Orleans, and they had the National Guard there. The Louisiana National Guard was working and out on the street. So you felt protected. I felt totally safe there. There were no issues. And I really feel if we did see police officers on the street, or if we did see military on the street, which is sad that we would need to, but if we did, I think we would feel more protected and feel safer about being there.
Mardi Gras is coming up in a few weeks. They may be prepping for that. Does anyone else have some? Oh, yes, sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
Is there a source that compares crime in the city with crime in various municipalities in St. Louis County and other parts of the region?
Okay, so getting crime data out of the county and the various municipalities in the county, getting official statistics from the police departments is extremely difficult. Part of that is a lot of those municipalities are very small, few numbers of officers. They have no civilian workers who are dealing with data and collating it in ways that would make it into the state system, which forwards it to the FBI. So all those, so many of them are quite challenging. I have colleagues at the university who have finally pried enough of it out of the county where they are beginning to be able to collate it, and so we can see what's going on where in the county and for the county as a whole. Because the county police is a separate entity. You can't just go to the county police department because they don't patrol the municipalities, and there's a lot of cooperatives. So locating where those incidents occur is extremely difficult as well within cooperative police departments that span multiple municipalities. So that's been a problem. The homicide data is good there, though, for the same reason it's good everywhere. But the other data is not.
Yes, sir. Oh, hold on just a minute. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why crime is better is because we have a new circuit attorney, Gabe Gore, and a great guy like Steven, that they're taking the criminals off the street. They're not releasing them in 5 or 6 things. And I think that's the third leg there and they've done a great job. They've opened up the warrant office and all the good stuff. They're really moving forward with it.
I want to follow up with that, but yes, sir.
That was pretty much my point.
Okay.
But the second one, a lot of it seems to be the state laws. Like the police will really catch hell if they chase somebody at high speed. So how are you going to catch these speeders if you can't chase them? You know, with cameras, you can do that, but people fuss about having surveillance cameras to have license plate readers. So it's kind of a vicious circle.
So, Steve, in your hiatus from the city, you were in the county.
Yeah, for part of it.
Okay, so now that you're back, what was the difference either between the city and the county, or what's the difference now between, maybe earlier in the 2000s as far as aggressiveness in prosecuting and getting people who I presume would become reoffenders if they weren't removed from the streets?
So the first part of that question, so I was not a prosecutor in St. Louis County. I worked for the county counselor's office, so I was a civil lawyer. So it's hard for me to compare the prosecutor's offices, but I can certainly speak to the difference now compared to when I left in 2018. We're still not where we should be as an office. It's still a rebuild. And, I've said that before to crowds, and they're like, come on, you've been there for over 2 years. What are you doing? It's difficult. It's when Gabe was appointed, we had about 22 attorneys. When I left in 2018, we had about 60. So, you just don't run out in the middle of Market Street and pick up 40 prosecutors. And so, we're rebuilding the office. I think we're now at a point now where we're close, maybe 5 attorneys away, 6 attorneys away from being back at that capacity. But remember, that's the capacity from when I left in 2018. And we all know the world is drastically different from 2018 to 2026. So, I think we're back prosecuting. We really concentrate on those violent crimes. We're really aggressive when we prosecute those violent crimes. But I've heard a lot of people talk in the room today about those nonviolent crimes, and I agree with you, sir. Like, it doesn't matter to you, right? Like, if someone comes up and runs up and grabs your wallet, or someone has the gun and grabs your wallet, you're still victimized. But we had to prioritize and concentrate on certain things, and so we decided we got to start with the violent stuff, and we're there. It's not that we don't prosecute the nonviolent stuff. We prosecute those as well, but we're really aggressive when we come to the violent crimes, which are the homicides, which are the assault first, the non-fatal shootings, the robberies where someone uses a weapon, and then also the sex offenses. And so, the big difference that I've seen is we're still growing back to the point from when I left. Gabe has done a wonderful job to bring in lots of seasoned prosecutors and has made an emphasis on bringing in some young attorneys. But I don't know how many attorneys there are out in the crowd or how many people know attorneys, but there is a huge pay discrepancy in what we can bring in. And I only bring that up because, it's a small segment of attorneys that really want to do what we're doing, because you can turn around and make a lot of money doing something else. And so that again, it's not an excuse, but it shows why it's taken some time to rebuild that office. And the other thing that Gabe constantly is telling me is, we want to be excellent at everything we do. So we don't compromise. We don't say, well, we need another 5 attorneys. Let's just go to the law school and take out the 5 that apply. No, we want the best of the best because we want to be the best office in the country. And so to do that, it takes time, it takes patience. But I think there is a drastic turn, certainly from when Gabe took over in 2023 to today. I think every day gets better and better at our office. We prosecute more crimes, we become more experienced. Somebody mentioned the warrant office opening. So when I got hired back, I was the chief warrant officer. Well, I didn't know that the warrant office wasn't open. And for those of you who don't know what that means is, we didn't have police officers coming to the courthouse, which means to review a case, there was no one to present that. As prosecutors, we don't go out on the street and do the investigations. That's what the police department does. And then when they feel confident they have a suspect, they have enough evidence, they have probable cause, they bring the case down to us and we review it to see if we have that probable cause that could proceed. Well, when Gabe took over, that warrant office wasn't open. Police officers were sending in cases via email, and I could tell you, because I'm the one that discovered it, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of cases that had not been reviewed. And so, when we took over, we kind of had 2 paths. One was, holy cow, we got to keep up with the day-to-day stuff, but then we had to go back and you have to look at thousands of cases that were sitting there dormant. And I could tell you there was at least a half a dozen homicides in those cases. And so, so the list, I think you're referring to some police officers. I'll be honest with you, Ms. Gardner did not leave anything in relation to the list, so I don't know much about that. But what we did was prioritize pulling out all those violent crimes from those cases that were dormant. And, every case, there's a saying in the criminal field that, the defense wants a continuance every time because the prosecutor's case gets worse with time. So imagine a scenario where a case sat there for 5 years and then the prosecutor finally gets a hold of it to review it. So it took a lot of work, but we've been through all those cases. We're now keeping up. The warrant office is open. Come on down. We've rebuilt that relationship with police officers. As a visitor, yeah, you don't want to see us if you're the defendant, for sure. But, it's hard to compare the 2 eras, but I think we're finally back to prosecuting like we should be. But it's going to take a little more time to get back to 100%.
So one of the things I'm aware of nationwide is, of course, crime has dropped everywhere. I want to ask you why. I want to ask you why it's down in the city of St. Louis. I believe we don't know why, and I'll ask your panelists to comment on that. But why do you think the city has had some success in these trends?
So I don't know why either. I don't work with stats, or I don't work with numbers, but I can tell you that we have been able to identify certain people that we call crime drivers. And we do believe if we can get to those crime drivers, that it will dramatically reduce crime sometimes. Now, it's not a perfect system, but there are instances, especially when we're talking about those car cloudings, we call them car breaking out your window, taking all your stuff. If you can find the right guy or the right group of guys, you can reduce, at least temporarily in that area, those type of crimes. But I don't know the answer to the reduction. I don't know if it's just a statistical anomaly. I can tell you that we do prosecute every case that we can, and I hope that's having an effect, but I don't know if we're even deep enough into the time frame to say if that's true or not.
Thank you. Pernell, do you have a sense, or are you aware of theories as to why we're seeing this nationwide and in the city?
Oh, no, I don't. I wish I did. I'd be rich. But I think he explained the chronic offenders. I do believe that speaks to something on why there may be, because a lot of times violence is concentrated, and there's a small percentage of people who actually commit those crimes. And if we're getting them off the street, then it's going to diminish the crime rates. So I believe that. I also believe in this technological age, youngsters who commit a large portion of the crimes aren't out in the open air like they used to be. They're in the house on those computers and their phones.
So there is a literature on crime trends, but it's not easy to be definitive about any particular source of especially a quick upturn and a quick decline unless you have good descriptive data. It took a while to figure out that this was a Kia and Hyundai problem across the country and where it was coming from. That's a different kind of problem about a trend to solve than what's accounting for a long-term decline during the 1990s, what's happening now in various cities. That's because there are international events like COVID, national events like recessions and economic downturns, local events, state changes in law, state law, loss of resources at cities. There's things going on in people's lives and in their neighborhoods. So there's such a wide range. If you think about it similarly, if you step back from some of the problems of crime and think about it as a disease, for example, we know diabetes is affected by things at all sorts of levels, and same with cancer rates, environmental all the way down the line. So that's what the crime trends people try to do, but unfortunately we're not going to know immediately on what's accounting for some of these long-term similarities across the cities. It's probably going to take a few more years of data to do the comparisons.
So this is a QR code for the report that's in front of you, for an electronic copy of the report. I'm going to open it up to questions if you have questions for any of our panelists. But let me encourage you to go there. If you've got something you want to add to our discussion tonight or something you read in the paper, there's an opportunity for you to let us know so that when we publish this, we can add all that feedback, either what we hear tonight or online. Yes, sir.
In terms of comparing the city of St. Louis's crime rate with other large national cities, over the years, and probably decades, mayors of the city and police chiefs have always said that the city of St. Louis had a unique geography. I don't know if it's because it's a city and a county and that it's unfair how those crime rates are calculated. Is there any validity to that, or were they just making this crap up?
I've got my, and you can add some meat to this if you want. I think it's legit because the footprint of the city is so small that the number per 100,000. It's as if take the worst part of your neighborhood and make that its own little city, and so crime is concentrated. If you were to zoom out of St. Louis, or maybe include the county, the high crime rate numbers would kind of be washed out by larger population, right? So I think it is legitimate. Some people want to combine the county and the city so that the numbers don't look as bad, but that doesn't make the fact that crime in a concentrated area is what it is. I mean, for example, I used to live in Washington, D.C. So people would come to Washington, D.C. and say, oh my gosh, the crime here is really bad. And I would say, actually, it's better and worse than you think. Because all the places you want to go are going to be fine. But the places that are bad, are really bad, but tourists don't go there. Does anybody need to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I know the people who made up that stuff. So no, I'm joking. Was not made up. But the point of it's a constricted denominator, as Patrick mentioned, and so we only have about 300,000 people in the city in a metropolitan area that has over a couple million, if you count the census definition, which includes the Illinois side. One of the things that is not appreciated in that it's not just that it's a constricted denominator, it's that people come into the city and commit crimes in the city. They're not from the city. And I don't know what proportion. I know there was a number out of about 5 years ago that about 40% of the people arrested and moving their cases through for a homicide were from outside the city. So, yeah. So that means if you think about a city that is also maybe a big tourist draw, they have a small residential population. That's the denominator of the rate. If you've got twice as many people come to the city every day that live there, you can see how that would inflate the top of the number, the numerator, and make them look more dangerous. The place has more crime, and a place has a higher rate. That doesn't mean the sources of that crime are from the city itself.
As we've been discussing this, it's great that we all have our perceptions and feelings and ideas. But are there any particular cities that you've been able to identify in the country that have been able to resolve extreme crime issues in a pretty dynamic way? And if so, how did they do it? And is there a way that we can copy it?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, no.
Well, I've done some reading about private policing in certain areas that's been pretty impactful with private funding and that sort of thing.
Well, I would imagine ultimately that just comes to more law enforcement, however defined, more law enforcement on the street. So yes, if you even privately, if you can increase the number of law enforcement, we'll see that. It's just most of the cities in the country are in the same state to greater or lesser degree.
So I'd like to hear each of your 3 best ideas on how to get crime down.
I'll start. I'm going to guess it's more money. I was going to say everyone move back to the city so that the tax base will go up and we have more resources to hire more police, or at least don't feel as your perception, try to be as accurate as you can about your perception. That's what I would say. Because, you speak to other people, and we get better prosecutors as that word of mouth,
Yeah.
St. Louis is a great place to work.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a tremendous amount of ideas, because what we do is we're reactive, right? As prosecutors, we review a case, see if a crime occurred, and then prosecute that crime. But I think there's some things we can do is, Gabe always says to me too, is he's like, it's people ask me if downtown is safe. Well, if you come down during the day and you're, there at a reasonable hour doing reasonable things, it's safe. And that hit me last week right after the snowstorm, because I live out here and I'm driving down Carmen Road, which is just south of here. And in one of the fields by the elementary school is tore up because someone took their pickup truck and did a bunch of donuts. Now, if that happens out off Carmen Road, we kind of laugh and we're like, oh, probably some teenagers. But if that happens in the city, then it's out of control because there's lawlessness and people are tearing up the park. So I think there's some perception issues there. We talked about that a little bit. So I don't know if that's a solution, but it did kind of hit me when I saw that after the snowstorm of, okay, maybe I need to rethink some things when I see them as well. The other thing is, it's not money, but it's resources. There's also an education component, and this is my time to plug our little program. We have a Citizens Academy down at the Circuit Attorney's office. We had one last fall, last spring, and then we're going to have one this fall. So if you're interested in the prosecutor's office in the city, the courts in the city, how it runs, what we look at, it's a nice program. We got some national attention for the program. So if that's something you want to be educated about or participate in, Leanne Mosby's in the back, and she'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. I can talk to you about it as well. But not that you're not educated about the ins and outs of it, but I know when I started at the prosecutor's office, I was in awe about how it wasn't Law and Order like I saw on TV. So, you know, I think it is beneficial for that aspect.
Mention one thing that hasn't been mentioned before that's shown to be one of the effective programs out there that's not based on law enforcement resource. It does involve law enforcement, but it's not the basis of it. It's part of the Office of Violence Prevention in the city, and they are supporting a long-term project called Save Lives Now, which focuses particularly on homicide and the highest rate offenders known to the prosecutor's office and the police. There is a small group in every city, something close to 7% of the population accounts for 50% of the incidents. If you target those persons, and this project brings to them, it's like both probation, parole, the police department, specially selected officers who can talk to people and get in a way that resounds with them, but they basically said, we know who you are. You're at high risk for dying of violence, and we know you're committing violence. We're watching you. If you want to get out of the life, it's not easy to get out of that lifestyle. If you want to get out of the life, we have a series of services for you, including we'll help you get jobs, we'll help you find ways out of the city or wherever you're out of your neighborhood or something like that. It's shown some early signs of success in the last couple of years, and it's still ongoing. So it's not just law enforcement that is going to be able to tackle this problem. It's a combination of multiple efforts.
Yeah, I guess one of the stats and whatnot are interesting, and you guys are experts in what you do, but the perception of what happens in the city, I think, is almost as big as any of these issues, because really all three of you sort of deal with crimes when they're already over. The crimes have already happened. People who watch TV at night, watch the 5 o'clock news, guess what? They see this guy was shot here, this guy was shot here. I've never seen anybody at a follow-up program saying a year later, this guy was prosecuted, now he's serving time here. So all you see is sort of the bad, glittery upfront stuff. You don't see any of the bad things. And the people, Wells Fargo's leaving, all these different companies are leaving the city, restaurants are shutting down. So nobody's going to the city. So you're not changing the perception because people aren't going there to see the difference. All they're seeing is what they see in the media. And that's, I think, one of your biggest challenges.
I think you're exactly right. I think law enforcement would tell you that, or people who are trying to grow the city would tell you that they are frustrated by news coverage because it is sensational. It can be clickbait. We asked people who participated last month and this month where you get your news or where you get information about the news. Most of it was, thankfully, TV and radio. Yeah. I wanted to use it because if anyone put next door, I was not going to let you come to the event. But again, that is part of the problem. And then it is part of the problem, which is just the perception. And that's what we're trying to do next is the numbers, however you defined, someone said statistics are BS. The numbers are going in the right direction. The next step has got to be to leverage that to get more people in the city, or at least fewer people afraid to visit the city.
All right, this is our last question.
Oh boy, you would save me for last because I've had so much I've wanted to say. I grew up in the city, in North St. Louis and in South St. Louis. If any of you know where Walnut Park is in the city of St. Louis, I first grew up there. Currently the highest area for crime concentration, I believe, or one of the highest in the city. We later moved and we lived down in South St. Louis and St. Louis Hills, one of the better areas, in other words, for less crime occurring, although they've had to hire their own private police force recently. Okay, never had to do that. Been out of the city for a while. My dad was a fire captain, so by charter, we had to live in the city. And he saw a lot, both in his job, but then I went on and I studied the history of St. Louis, published, conducted research, got a doctorate from St. Louis University on demographic change in St. Louis back during the 80s, why people were leaving the city for the county. and looking at the specific reasons. So we talk about crime tonight, and that's fine. We're here. I mean, that's sort of a singular issue in some ways. But the reason why St. Louis's population is going down decade by decade to the point where, it's at where it was, I think, the late 19th century or mid 19th century, okay, is multivariate. Okay, so that means multiple variables. So whether it's crime could be considered rated high, but also education, access to resources, sort of general other quality of life variables. My point is that it's not as often as simple as just crime. Okay, it could be a big part of it. And again, I'm also I'm a bit of a research skeptic. I'm an empiricist. So I look at every study. I look through the data. I look at how it was collected. I look at, as was mentioned up here, its validity and reliability. And yes, when I did my study of demographic change, I went to the coroner's office. They were the most reliable and the only place to go for murder data. But again, coming back to this, I think what needs to happen is, back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, my dissertation director, George Wendell, God rest his soul, he fought during the 70s for solutions to turn things around in the city of St. Louis. Back in those days, we remember there was something called revenue sharing with the federal government. There was block grants. There was model cities. We're pouring money into cities that were considered to be deteriorating, and St. Louis was a leader in that. The Rand Report of 1974 put St. Louis at the top, and it really hasn't changed. And my dissertation director told me, and he passed away way back in 2000, said, "What will St. Louis become one day?" I know. That's why I waited to the end. What will St. Louis become one day? Will it just be a place to go for tourists, for people looking to come in for sports, culture, entertainment, and then leave? But what about the people? I think there was some discussion. Downtown's so safe. I've been downtown. Yes, and it all depends on your perception. I was a day before a murder on the streets, and an execution-style murder a block from the building where I was at several years ago. And I'm not saying that anything's perfect, but we have to look at the city as a whole, beyond the central corridor, where so much TIF and development money has been put into. Look at the neighborhoods that have been shelled out and what can be done there. Again, perception is even more than just crime. It's very important, but it's more than that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Please do keep in touch with us. If there's something you want to follow up, whether it's just a comment or a dissertation, share it with us. We will publish in a few weeks, but this is really helpful for us because it's not something we just want to throw at you. We want to hear from you as well. So have a wonderful evening, drive safe, and thank you.